Well, hey, everybody. It's Friday. There's nobody at school because we're closed. But I'm doing this review like I promised I would. I'm a politician that keeps his promises somewhat, some of the time. But let's talk about Unit 4. So you'll need to know the jurisdiction of the federal district courts. That's on the slide. You need the jurisdiction of the Court of Appeals. You need to know the jurisdiction of the U.S. Supreme Court. You should know what a defendant is, what a plaintiff is. You should know what a felony is. You should know what amicus curiae means. This is like the third time I've had it out there. You should know an example of civil law. You should know how many justices sit on the Supreme Court. You should know the Fourth Amendment. You should know what common law is. You should know the First Amendment. You should know the case of Griswold versus Connecticut, which was last thing we talked about on Thursday. You should know Mapp versus Ohio, Plessy versus Ferguson, which we're going to talk about on Monday. And you should know Roe v. Wade, which we're going to talk about on Monday, but probably many of you are familiar with. You should know where the right to privacy is found in the Constitution. That could be a trick question. You should know the case of Barron versus Baltimore, Schenck versus the United States. Here's something that we haven't discussed, but will show up on the test. It's understanding what is a writ of mandamus. You should know the case of Marbury versus Madison. We have talked about that. You should know the case of Gitlow versus New York. You should know the two types of segregation, de facto and de jure. We will talk about that on Monday. You should know the Brown versus Board of Education case, which we will talk on Monday. You should know the 13th Amendment, which we'll talk about on Monday. You should know the Dred Scott case, which we will talk about on Monday. This sounds familiar. You should know the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment. You should know the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which we will talk about on Monday. You should know the case of Reynolds versus the United States. You should know the case of Engel versus Vitale. You should know the case of Edwards versus Aguilar. These are things that we covered on Thursday. You should know Miller versus California, if you remember, comes up with the Miller test. You should know the case of Powell versus Alabama. We talked about that a couple of days ago with the Scottsboro boys. You should know the Fifth Amendment. You should know the case of Furman versus Georgia. You should know what the rule of four is. You should know Gideon versus Wainwright. And you should know Texas versus Johnson. You should know what a writ of certiorari is. You should know what senatorial courtesy is. And you should know what a capital crime is. There you go. There's your review. So good luck, and we'll see you on Monday.